Welcome everyone to Nerd of the Rings. We continue to get news these last couple weeks. First it was the Peter Jackson and Andy Serkis returning to Middle-earth news. Then we got the Rings of Power teaser. And today we get confirmation that Tom Bombadil will appear in Season 2 of the Rings of Power. Not only that, we got an article write-up about Tom Bomb and our first look at the character in live action. So let's dive into this article. I'll point out a couple things that I thought were pretty interesting, and of course, we'll take a look at Tom Bomb and see how he's looking in this adaptation. We see here, Tom is played by Rory Kinnear. You might recognize him from the James Bond films, among other things. And naturally, everyone familiar with the character is going to immediately look at his wardrobe. After all, he is one of the few characters who has songs that involve describing his wardrobe. We do see he's got an old battered hat. It looks like there is a long blue feather. It looks like it's kind of fallen down. It's not sticking up like you see in a lot of illustrations over the years. He's got kind of a light blue jacket. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it's bright blue. He's got his long brown beard. And the boots, I was really not sure about the boots. The interior shots make it really hard. They look just brown. But if we go to the outdoor picture, we do see that they definitely have some yellow to them. They still look pretty brown to me. Who knows? Maybe he'll upgrade and get some better yellow boots at the end. Maybe that's his whole character arc. He's just looking for a good pair of boots. Now, this is a fairly long article. Like I said, I'm going to point out a couple things that I thought were kind of interesting. I'll include the link in the description if you guys want to check out the full article. It's definitely worth a read. And one of the things I liked from this article, they talked to Rory Kinnear about being cast as Tom Bombadil. He said when he was offered the part that he would read it and get back to him. And he says, I went downstairs to my partner who did know the books and does know the films. And I said, I've been offered this part. Apparently it's in the books. A guy called Tom Bombadil. She was like, no way, you're not playing Tom Bombadil. So I sort of knew instantly then that it had a cultural heft to it that I was going to have to be sensitive to. Kinnear makes it clear that his partner, fellow Penny Dreadful actor Pandora Collin, was simply surprised to hear that the show would feature Tom Bombadil. She wasn't disputing his casting. No, she was excited. That was her excited face. Kinnear says. She was like, I can't believe that. Her words were, he's my favorite character in all of the books. And I think that last line there is an important one to keep in mind. Like, this is a fan favorite character, and, you know, there's a reason that he's not in any adaptation. You know, you look at all the Lord of the Rings films, even the audio drama from 1981, they cut out Tom Bombadil in part because he is so quirky. You know, he's above all these battles between good and evil. You know, we know that if he were given the ring, he would just lose it because he has no interest in it or its power. There's just something delightful about this guy that, you know, if you make him too integral to the plot and too interested in the goings-on of the world, then you do lose some of that charm. And if you're like me and you have the Tolkien book release calendar bookmarked on your web browser at Tolkien Guide, then you'll recall that we are getting a new edition of The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, which is coming out August 20th, just 9 days before the start of Rings of Power Season 2. This new paperback edition will have previously unpublished poems and notes, and of course, those beautiful illustrations by Pauline Baines. And in this article, they actually got some quotes from Chris Smith about Tom Bombadil. Chris, of course, is the publishing director for Tolkien titles at HarperCollins. He has his origins in the name of a wooden doll that lived in the Tolkien family. And like many of the toys owned by the children, such as the teddy bears who appeared in Mr. Bliss, or the metal dog that inspired the hero of Rover Random, Tom Bombadil was drawn into Tolkien's invented world. His first known appearance was in the 1920s in a story entitled Tom Bombadil. And even in this fragment, which is included in the new edition of The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, he is described as one of the oldest inhabitants in the kingdom, suggesting that from the outset, Tolkien viewed Tom as primordial. Later, in the early 1930s, Tolkien put him into a poem. And then later in the article, Chris goes on to say, having lived for a millennia, he has learned and understood its deeper mysteries, and perhaps this is why he has now become master, as he is called by himself and his wife Goldberry, and why he is free from any control by the outside world. He is a pure and unaffected joy in the living things of the world, very much removed from the oppressive menace of the overarching tale of the quest of the ring. Perhaps Tolkien intended Tom to remain forever a light in the darkness of troubled times. But ultimately, he must remain a delightful enigma. We also read in the article that Tom Bombadil offers playful guidance to the otherwise heavy and ominous stranger. We also learn that he's going to have a Cornish accent. That's kind of an interesting story from Kinnear. Check that out in the article if you're interested in that. But the big news here, obviously, is that he is in Rhûn, apparently. So he's going to come into contact with the stranger. A lot of people think he's Gandalf. I'm still holding out hope for Blue Wizard. Hopefully, we'll see. But he's definitely in Rhûn, and obviously, you know, Tom Bombadil is pretty synonymous with the Old Forest. Depending on how you read the text, you kind of get the hint that he's been there since the beginning. There are a couple quotes in here from the showrunners. Here it says, for the series, Payne and McKay took the liberty of giving Bombadil a second home on the outskirts of a region called Rhûn. That, of course, is the East, where the Easterlings are from. In our story, he has gone out to the lands of Rhûn, which we learn used to be sort of Edenic and green and beautiful, but now is sort of a dead wasteland, Payne says. Tom has gone out there to see what's happened as he goes on his various wanderings. They go on to say, expect Tom Bombadil to offer the stranger some rare compassion in this otherwise merciless place. As Payne explains, when he finally crosses paths with the stranger, you could say he has a desire to try to keep the destruction that has happened there from spreading to his beloved lands in the West. He nudges the stranger along his journey, which he knows will eventually protect the larger natural world that he cares about. So I'd say our Tom Bombadil is slightly more interventionist than you see in the books, but only by 5 or 10%. One minor correction for the article that I will note is that they call the forest Withywindle, which Withywindle is actually the name of the river that flows into the Brandywine, and Tom Bombadil lives right by the Withywindle, but that isn't the name of the forest. It's just called the Old Forest. And then skipping down to the bottom of the article, we get kind of a summary of how Tom fits into what they're planning for Season 2. It says, as Season 2 of The Rings of Power gets underway, Tom Bombadil offers aid and comfort not just to the stranger, but also the audience. Season 1 set the pieces on the chessboard, and in Season 2 the pieces are in motion, and it's really about the villains, Payne says. You've got Sauron, who is not cloaked behind the guise of Halbrand anymore, thank goodness. The audience knows he's Sauron, so now we're watching him maneuver as he's manipulating Adar, who's another big villain of the season. Really, Tom is sort of a curiosity within that structure, because while it is darker, Tom Bombadil is singing and saying lines that could be nursery rhymes from children's poems. So he sort of defies the tonal shift of the rest of the season and is a real point of light amidst an otherwise sea of darkness. So there we go. We get another quote. There's been a good amount of them saying that Season 2 is going to be darker, which, if my theories prove true that this season is going to kind of build toward and conclude with the siege of Eregion and the sacking of Eregion, that kind of makes sense. Spoiler alert, doesn't go so well for Eregion, if you hadn't guessed by the title, The Sack of Eregion. Now, a few observations from the images and from the article that I had just top of mind here. Do let me know what you guys think in the comments as well. Now, these are obviously only promo images. They're not even stills from the actual show, but I do kind of wish that they showed Tom in more of a jovial, show some of that silliness, playfulness, like have him smile maybe in some of these pictures. He just looks so serious in these images. And it sounds like, in the actual show, we'll see him and he will stick out as something completely different. But I already saw some folks commenting online that they thought that he was just another wizard or something based on this appearance, which, like I said, they're just images and they're just promo images at that. But I do kind of wish that one of them, he was like smiling and, you know, you got that Tom Bombadil sense of silliness to him. Obviously, the big thing here will be the fact that he's in Rune. Like I said, he's kind of synonymous with the Old Forest, so we'll see how that plays out, the justification for having him in Rune. I was pretty convinced that in the teaser trailer, the revolving shot around Galadriel and Elrond and their crew had Barrow-wights in the background. So I assumed that would be where Tom Bombadil would show up if we did indeed see him in this show. So assuming that he's someplace completely different, I'm very curious to see how that scene plays out, unless, you know, for some reason Galadriel and Elrond also end up in Rune. Now, of course, we also have to wonder, will Goldberry show up? Maybe she's at home in the Old Forest and Tom has gone on a solo mission. Maybe he's gonna find some really exquisite water lilies, some of those runic water lilies, to bring home to her after this adventure. So yeah, I'm very, very curious to see how this character comes off. I mean, there's definitely a reason he's been cut out of adaptations before. They even allude to it in an article, how, you know, in a movie, you've got more finite amount of time, and with a TV show, you know, you might have more room to expand. So that's kind of what they've done here. And in my recent interview with Philippa Boyens, we actually talked about the decision to cut Tom Bombadil and how they made a particular edit so that you can kind of put the story in yourself and it's just not shown on camera. So check out that interview if you're interested in hearing more about that decision. Now, I know you'll probably see a lot of posts saying that this is the first time Tom Bombadil has ever been adapted. Now, in live action film, yes, that is true. However, he has been adapted in a variety of video games like Lotro and others. But in a follow-up to what is one of, if not my favorite Lord of the Rings adaptation, that being the previously mentioned 1981 BBC radio drama, they did a 1992 audio drama of Tales from the Perilous Realm. And actually, in that adaptation, rather than adapting the adventures of Tom Bombadil, which is all these poems like we're going to see in that book coming out later this year, they actually adapted the chapters from Fellowship of the Ring that feature Tom Bombadil. So if you're curious to hear those play out in much the same manner as that 1981 radio drama, check out the 1992 radio series Tales from the Perilous Realm. But yes, this will be the first time that we see Tom Bombadil in the flesh in live action. Oh, another thing toward the end of the article, it does say, Tom Bombadil brings this levity while remaining somewhat in the shadows himself. Payne and McKay have decided not to answer any questions about the character that Tolkien himself left deliberately unresolved, and I gotta say, that would be a really good choice to not try to explain the origin or the true nature of Tom Bombadil. I've done an entire video here on the channel of the best theories of what Tom Bombadil is, and I can't help but think that in a TV show like this where he's a minor character, any explanation you give would probably be underwhelming. You know, it's something like, oh, he's another Maiar. Like, that'd be pretty underwhelming. Or going the complete opposite direction, you know, we had those crazy rumors earlier in the season where Tom and Goldberry were going to be Morgoth and Ungoliant, like serving out a penance for their evil deeds in the First Age, and that was what Tom and Goldberry were going to be. And I can't help but think that maybe this quote is to like kind of put those rumors to bed finally. I hope, because yeah, I think trying to over-explain things is something that Season 1 did with the Mithril, and it didn't really work. So the fact that they can let Tom be his own thing and be, you know, just this enigma, I think that's probably the best move. But what say you, old Tolkien fan, watching this here video? Does this Tom Bomb Jolly Tom seem like Bombadillo? Do you wish he were more glad, perhaps even singing? Do you like him with the stranger? No water lilies bringing? Say what you feel in the comments, no need for diatribe. Watch my videos on Old Tom, and please do subscribe.